Hello, everybody. It is Badger Wild, and we are back with a Space Engineers info video, tips or tricks video. I don't know what I'm calling these, honestly. Um, Mostly today, we are getting back to our ship classification series, and today we are looking at another ship that we are going to explain the classification through through use. For those of you that are new to this, go back and check out the other two videos I've done. I've explained a Corvette and a frigate based on job performance, what it is designed to do, because that is the easiest way to tell what a ship is and what it's like, what classification. A lot of people, you go into looking into classification on length, size, weight, number of guns. You're going to have a lot more difficulty figuring out what these ships are supposed to do other than looking at what their class is. So anyway, without further ado, let's get started. So, forgive me, I have bit my cheek. So you're going to hear a little more spit moving around than normal because I'm trying to work around a wound. But today we're going to be looking at destroyers. And I already know what some people are going to say, and I'm going to nip in the bud right now. Why is the Paris class frigate over here? And I'll explain in a minute. But first, what is a destroyer? Well, going by corvettes and frigates, as I've said before, the ship is based on its job. Now, in a medium weight class of ship, the destroyer is like the frigate. It's about 60 something blocks long, usually is what I would consider a destroyer in terms of length. Um, I would not worry too much about the design. Okay, the destroyer can have armor and it cannot have armor. These can be glass cannons or brawlers, depending on what they're supposed to do. Uh, if you need to know what a destroyer is, it is basically a bully for big ships that sometimes punches above its own weight. That being said, this is the ship that goes in there. It has no other function. So the reason why frigates and destroyers kind of get some misconsiderations because both of them usually carry the same armaments. The frigate, like I said in the last video, is a utilitarian ship. If you have a job in the fleet that you need the frigate to accomplish, it is a ship that can be tailor-made for that one specific purpose. The destroyer is like that, but different. The destroyer is built to be a purpose-built ship, but it is a master of a specific task, and that is destroying other ships. You will not see a hospital destroyer. You will not see an assault destroyer. You will not see a logistics destroyer. It's in the name. It's supposed to go out and destroy whatever is out there causing a problem. These ships are usually moderately fast. They can sometimes keep up with corvettes. Kind of the speed of a destroyer should be able to keep up with a corvette, but not outmaneuver it. In other words, if a corvette decides to run for beat 90 and run, the destroyer should be able to keep pace with it and just kill it with whittling fire if it has to. Bigger ships, it should be able to significantly threaten them within a fleet. How does this work? Usually, destroyers are going to be those ships that have the large capital grade weapon systems. And this is where we get to the Paris class, because it's a great example of a very small class of destroyer. Now, like I said, destroyers are like frigates in terms of weight and size. A destroyer can be the size of a corvette. It can be the maximum size of a corvette, or it can be the minimum size of a cruiser. So that's the type of area you're going to be playing with in there. Anywhere between 36 and 60 blocks. So they're usually, the maximum length will be twice the size of a corvette, at least in IWL military standard. But the reason we have the Paris class frigate here is one of the things that is very common in Halo is the use of a spinal mounted weapon system. And this is this is something that the Paris class is known for, having that giant railgun up top, just being the flying rifle. One of the reasons for this, especially in space lore, it's not something you see in naval combat, but space lore. That's where we're kind of going with this. In space lore, Usually your destroyer is carrying one big, heavy anti-capital ship weapon, and the Paris class does this in spades. It's got several small weapons to defend itself. Can a destroyer defend itself from small craft and missiles? Usually they have the bare minimum PDC armament. You're not going to see an anti-missile or screening destroyer. The entire purpose of this ship is to be a master at destroying other ships. That's exactly how it works. So it'll carry the big guns. You're going to want spinal mounted weapon systems. You're going to want anti-ship cannons. You can have a few PDCs, like you can see here, just a few of them. It can run its own ships. There is actually a destroyer called a helicopter destroyer, which uses helicopters as its primary anti-ship weapon system. That is in Japan. We've talked about this in almost every video because it is a prime example of just how far you can push a ship if you go lore-wise with it. You can do the lore in a lot of things. Next one over here, we've got this one. I do not know the names of these. I set this video up, and I didn't have time to familiarize myself with all the destroyers I got in here, name-wise. But if you look at this would qualify as a short-range missile destroyer. It does have a cargo bay here. You could have a couple small craft come out and engage. It's not a carrier, but it is a destroyer. It's got several missile pods, and I believe, does it? Yes. It's got several forward-firing missile systems. So we're still sitting here with the spinal weapon systems. And this is something you're going to see on destroyers a lot. They are going to have spinal-mounted weaponry or weaponry that is fixed, that carries a big punch when they can implement it. The kicker is getting it in there and implementing it properly. But like I said, one of the things you're going to notice about these ships also, they're also either very well armored, and this is kind of a combination of two in the same class. The Paris class, I would not consider it the most heavily armored ship. This ship has more spaced armor on it, meaning it's more inclined to a brawling effect. And as you can see here, we've got limited PDC coverage. It's about 4 PDCs, probably for the entire vessel to defend it with. Paris class has very few, even less PDCs. It's not supposed to deal with a bunch of fighters and smoke them all. The thing about medium class ships is they're not supposed to be dual ships. That's a cruiser. We'll get to those in like a video or two. Heading on over here, this is probably one of the nicer looking destroyers on the deal, but you can see we're going with the same design aspect. And going here, you can see we got forward firing artillery cannons, about 6 of those. We've got extra armor plating. Let me head around here where it's more light. You can see extra armor plates protecting specific positions. You can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 PDCs. It's not got as much as a screening frigate would have. Screening frigate would have multiple PDCs. This has multiple cannons that can be operated. Lots of assault cannons. The assault cannons are heavily armored up. This would be a heavy destroyer. On top of that, it's got a custom-built railgun turret, which can be used for flanking maneuvers. So these would be more of a direct contact destroyer. You could pull something like this as a flanking destroyer. So then you're getting into 2 different types of classes at that point. Usually your destroyers are built on, if they're specializing in a weapon, so you'll have like a railgun destroyer. This can be a fixed railgun or a turreted railgun. You can also have ships that are specific by, like I said, just the weapon or the objective it's supposed to do. So if you have a destroyer that has a lot of turreted weaponry on it, it could be considered a flanking destroyer. If you have a destroyer that has a lot of forward weaponry, it can be a direct destroyer. Missile destroyers are kind of an indirect fire system. In other words, they've got the missiles to fire at long range. Most of these are using rocket pods, though. So if you have missiles or custom missiles, that's also a destroyer. If its primary weapon is to destroy another vessel, and we're talking ships, not boats, then yeah, the destroyer works. It can take on other ships. It can take on small craft, but it's not going to be very good at it. The idea of the medium weight class is to not have a cruiser, but to have the cruiser broken up into smaller ships that are easier to build and much easier to maintain. You know, cheap firepower. Here we come to the next one over here, and we've got several options here. We've got a lot of PDC guns, obviously. Looking through here. And it appears to be mostly PDC cannons. I can't remember, why did I pick this one again? Oh, yes. It actually has like a big cannon or something right here. Yeah, this triple block railguns. This thing gets into position. It's like a forward attack brawler frigate, or brawler destroyer. Keep calling them frigates. My lord. But we've got that one big cannon on the side, and it's designed to just punch a hole, and then we've got these smaller cannons on the bottom, and it's got some auto cannons. Now the auto cannon, it is good for anti-air defense, but it also works great for anti-ship defense on anything with like light armor. So this thing can go in and take out a Corvette if it wants to. You also take a look back here at the back of these ships. Like I said, we're probably, another thing, the minimum engine count, I would say, for a destroyer would be 2 large hydrogen engines and maybe 3 ion engines. That would be the, or at least an ion engine. That would be the minimum thruster pack I would be looking for. You need to be able to hit the thruster, and these things get out of there very quickly and very fast. So yeah, this is more of a direct confrontation destroyer, and it's probably something that would run down a Corvette that's harassing the fleet, or trying to harass like the assault ship of the fleet, or the small craft that are trying to take off and do something. This destroyer could take it out. It's also got a big heavy railgun for larger ships, so destroying. Go over here, we've got another example of a brawler destroyer, or a, actually no, this might be, no, it's got the forward fire weapon system. So it is a forward firing or direct destroyer, but it's also got enough turreted controls here that it could outflank other ships if it has to. So you can have a balanced destroyer here. pretty balanced design. You'll also notice that destroyers are pretty narrowly designed. Unlike some of the frigates you can get really crazy with, like the Paris. We have a frigate here to look at. The Paris has all kinds of openings, but if you were to look at like maybe the Halberd class, I couldn't find a good Halberd class on there to work with. But the Halberd class destroyer, you'll notice it's much more narrow, more narrowly focused. Also, you can see the size difference in these ships. Whatever you build the destroyer to the situation, you don't build it to a certain standard. If you're going to build something that's going to use a lot of missiles, and that's the kind of ship you need, well, build it. That's how it should be done. I know this seems like a bit of a rambly video, but I feel like I need to like hammer out all these details and whatnot. So here we've got another destroyer. This one used to qualify as a missile destroyer, and we're qualifying it now as a rocket destroyer. This would be one that would simply fly in. This is a classic example of a flanking destroyer. This destroyer would work in tandem with one of the direct conflict destroyers, probably the big blue one right over here. I can't remember what it is called. Praetorian? I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, you could have this one working in tandem with that one, as it has direct fire capability. And this could just shoot on past. So, tactics with a destroyer, you'll have probably 2 in a fleet. One will go in and start the attack. It'll usually be the heavier armed destroyer with a heavy armored destroyer, as it'll fire. And then you'll have destroyers like this, which are usually pretty lightweight, and they've got a good thruster pack on them, and they can hit hard, they can move fast, hit hard, and get out. So this thing will move in while the enemy is focusing on the big heavy destroyer with all the heavy guns. This light destroyer will come in and just pepper them with missiles. Hit a target, knock out several weapon systems, and weaken it so that it's easier for the direct destroyer. Suddenly gets an advantage. Think of it as having, what is the game? Age of Empires. So when you're in Age of Empires in any part of the game, if you put more villagers if you put a villager on a task, that villager will build it within a certain amount of time. But if you put 2 villagers on that same task, they'll build it twice as quickly. And then you just keep increasing the number of villagers. That's what destroyers operate as. And this is how these medium weight class ships, in terms of frigates and destroyers, that's how they operate. Each one does a specific job, but in a combat scenario, if they all combine, kind of like Voltron, but not in the same way, they kind of combine up and they start hammering away at other vessels and start beating the crap out of them, well, you end up with with a set of ships that are easy to produce, easy to build. And that's the thing about destroyers and frigates. They have to be quick to build. You should be able to build several of these very quickly. You should be able to, if one of them gets taken out, replenishing it should be easy to do. Now, prime example of this is Outlands. Outlands, they actually had a rule. The only thing that limited destroyers was a rule that said destroyers had, I think there was a rule that said that you had to wait a turn before you could build another destroyer. And then battleships and stuff like that had to be repaired within so many turns. So it wasn't something that you could just fix and field. Whereas the frigates, you could field as many of them as possible. And I think the cons used a tactic called frigate spam, where they just threw a bunch of cheap ships at a target, just kept hammering them until they won. So, yeah, this is anyway, folks. This is destroyers. Okay, that's what they are. They're like a frigate. You know, the frigate, as we said in the last video, is designed to fill a specific role. It's a the frigate's like a jack of all trades. This is the master of destruction right here. This ship is solely focused on doing one job and one job only. Going in, destroying whatever vessel it is picked at. It's a pit bull. You unleash it onto the field, and it finds the troublemaker on the battlefield. Could be a missile frigate, could be a logistical frigate, and the destroyer moves in quickly, takes it out, and then moves on to the next one. It should have a lot of firepower, but they're medium weight ships, just like a frigate. They're just a medium weight class vessel. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know these are rambly, but there is a lot of information to convey. I know a lot of people have said that. I am putting some scripts down to keep everything cohesive, but it just there's a lot of info that I don't get when I'm writing, and then when I'm doing the video, I remember a bunch of crap that I need to probably put in the video. Anyway, folks, hope you guys enjoyed this, and as usual, stay safe, stay frosty. If you like the content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notification. Check me out on Rumble, and I have a subscribe star. Anyway, I am Badger Wild, and I'll see you guys in the next video.